we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, and Vice Chair, just give me 1 second. I'm going to put the flag up and then we can start, okay? So please just wait until the flag is up.
Okay. Can I ask Commissioner Thelma to lead the Pledge of Allegiance this week? Last week I had done it. Can I request? Sure.
Yes, sure. Okay. Let's start. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America. Of the United States of America.
States of America
And to the republic
for
and to
which
the
it
republic
stands,
one nation,
one
one
nation,
nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
for liberty
and
and justice
justice for all.
for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Thelma. We'll move on to the roll call for this week's meeting. Commissioner Vishal,
Present.
Commissioner George, we can see you, Commissioner George, but can't hear you. So
Present.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Leon,
Present.
Commissioner Thelma,
Present.
Commissioner Van Long. I know we are there, so if you can just raise your hand on through Zoom, that might be helpful. Okay. Vice Mayor Bob.
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. Do we need, is there anyone else that I missed out?
Yes, I'm here. Rosario.
Okay, Commissioner Rosario. So we do have a
Present,
quorum,
yeah.
right, Robert? Today do we need to seat the alternates?
You do not need to seat the alternates.
Okay. So we can move on to item number 5, which is approval of the agenda for the.
Excuse me, Vice Chair. You can put the alternate Commissioner Gilroy is online.
Okay, Commissioner
We
Gilroy?
need to, yeah. Gilroy?
Okay, thank you. So approval for the agenda for today's meeting. Do we have a motion for approval for this agenda?
I
Anyone
move
willing-
that.
Okay, anyone
This
second?
is Thelma. I move that the agenda be approved.
I second it.
Second.
This is Vishal.
Okay, I heard Commissioner Vishal go first, so we'll take yours. Item number 6, which is approval of meeting minutes from last month's meeting, September 2nd. Do we have a motion for approval of the meeting minutes?
A motion to approve. Okay. Go ahead.
you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Leon. I heard you putting the motion and then Commissioner Rosario for the seconding it.
Second.
Thank you. We'll move on to the public forum. Interested public members may provide comments to the Commission on any subject not on the agenda by submitting written comments on the city website, which is listed here, ci.milpitas.gov/public comments. Comment entries will only be available during the meeting. Commentators may state their name and address for the record and shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes or less, or the amount of time as designated by the chair. City staff will monitor the comments and read out the comments during the meeting at the approval of the chair. As an unagendized item, no response is required of the Commission or city staff. However, the Commission may request staff to agendize the item for a future meeting. Do we have any members of the public forum today present?
There are no public comments.
Okay. Item number 8, announcements. Robert, is there any announcements from the city or anything that the Commission and the members here need to know?
There are no announcements. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair and Robert. I was tied up a little bit. I was just wondering on the earlier items for the approval of the agenda and minutes, did you kind of do a roll call vote?
Yes,
for
that
the
was item number 3. Sorry, I can't see you. Who is this?
Oh, sorry, this is Sharon.
Yeah, so we did the roll call here.
No,
We
I'm
did
sorry.
not
I'm
call for the
talking
vote.
about no 5 and 6 for approval agenda. If you can do a roll call vote.
Oh, for the
and
vote.
same thing
Okay,
for number
got
6.
it. Sure. So we had a motion for going back to item number 5 here, approval of the agenda. We did have the motion and the second. Do we have an approval from all the members here? Is that a yes? Do we have a yes or a no?
Oh, yes,
Yes,
Yes.
Selma.
yes,
Yes.
Thank you.
yes,
For item number
okay, yes.
6, for item number 6, again, we need a vote on that from the commission. We did have the motion and Commissioner Rosario seconded that. So do we have a vote on that?
I'm sorry. Can you
Yes.
do a roll call vote? Actually calling out.
Okay.
Each
Okay.
name of the commissioner.
Okay. So
For
we'll go
each of those.
for,
Thank you.
okay, we'll go for item number 5 again here. Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Thelma.
Yes,
I see Commissioner Kavita here, but she was not part of the roll call for item number 3. Do we still get to vote or she's alternate?
She's as an alternate.
Okay. Commissioner Van Long.
Van Lan had responded in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Thelma,
Yes, vote.
Commissioner Vishal,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gilroy.
He's an alternate as well.
Okay.
Vote. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay. For item number 6, I'll do the roll call again here. So Commissioner Thelma,
Yes,
Commissioner Vishal,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Long. She's put in the chat here, so I presume that's a yes. Commissioner Rosario
Yes,
and Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Chen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we can move on to item number 9 here, which is the city liaison report. Vice Mayor, we have Vice Mayor Bob Nunes on in the meeting today. Anything from your side, Vice Mayor?
Yes, Steve, thank you very much. And so the only topic I'd like to bring up for discussion and consideration for our next meeting is I was contacted by the Vice President for Milpitas Unified School District, Chris Norwood, about consideration for or where we were at with regard to National Night Out, as well as consideration for maybe something with regard to health. And I thought since CAC is where National Night Out resided in years past, and even though we had decided to do something different, which was to not host it this year, in light of the request to look at that, I wanted to at least bring the Vice President forward to speak to what he had in mind briefly, and then see if that's something that the commission wanted to put on our agenda for next month. So I know that I saw Chris, I thought I saw him in the participants. Yes.
Yes.
There you are, Chris. So I don't want to misinterpret or misstate what you were looking to do. So if you could just talk a little bit about what you're asking. And so if it fits within this commission, I wanted them to be able to consider it.
Sure. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, commissioners. For those, again, that don't know me, my name is Chris Norwood, and I'm currently the Vice President of the Milpitas Unified School District Board of Trustees. I'm also a 47-year resident of the city of Milpitas. In the late winter, early spring, the city of Milpitas and the Milpitas Unified School District began to work together regarding shelter in place and COVID-19. We shared information, we collaborated on resources, we did continuous releases, keep our residents, parents, and students informed. We worked on food distribution, talked about PPE, there was the mask ordinance from the city, and there were the community-based mask initiatives and more. And as you know, we are no longer in shelter in place. We're working towards And because we're no longer in shelter in place the way that we were before, as the city is looking for the economy to open up and the more opening of businesses, we are looking to move forward with opening up our schools. We're looking at also looking to bring our teachers back. And what the data says right now currently is that, I've got just a couple of notes here. What the data says here is that today in Milpitas, based on the county information, we have approximately 714 cases reported out of per 100,000. That's an approximate number. I think it's somewhere around 714 or so. Someone else can correct me if they have the data readily available. This information, plus the health conditions of some of our teachers, our staff, excuse me, because we have more than teachers, their age, news media, and some of the COVID-19 cases hitting very close to home is creating a justified anxiety in our school district employee population. And what we're looking for here to identify a couple of things that Milpitas, the city council, they were the first to do a countywide mask ordinance. Milpitas Unified School District was one of the first in the state to go with distance learning with MUSD Educate Everywhere. Milpitas is a special place and has a very unique history. And what we've done is that we began to launch a safety and health campaign within the school district. One, to educate our teachers as well as our parents and their children on the realities and the myths of COVID-19. Because we want to, again, one, we see that the active schools are also an active part of the Milpitas economy. And we're hopeful that possibly at this commission, I reached out to a couple of folks to ask about National Night Out. I know that National Night Out is one of the rare times that a number of community members are getting together in their unique environments to get to know their neighbors, and the city gets a chance to disseminate information through the police department, through the city, and a number of different places. And I was recently informed that National Night Out isn't going to happen this year. And I was wondering if there's a possibility that there could be some sort of National Night Out, but it's most likely could be via Zoom or something like that, where this information about, or even whatever, any idea that can come up, that we can work together to further disseminate the information about COVID-19 testing, the myths and the realities. Because our goal is that if our teachers saw, or our staff in the Milpitas Unified School District saw, some live in the community and they live in surrounding communities, if our per case rate went down to, let's say, below 500, that would really let them know that, hey, the city of Milpitas is doing an extraordinary job of making sure that the communities are safe, and that the parents and all the other residents are setting the example for the students so that it would be best to bring them back on campus. We have a number of different student groups that really need to be on campus. We have opened up some learning pods, but again, we know the number one way that we can get our schools to be reopened again is in relationship with the city, communicating through the residents. And one of the ideas that came to the table was the National Night Out.
Thank you very much, Chris. So what I'm asking is, I know we are, or at least we have made a decision on National Night Out. I did talk to the police chief, who is open to do anything the city council and or this commission would like us to do. And I'd like to ask for consideration to place this on next month's agenda and have staff take a look at how the city and the school district could partner, and either in a virtual National Night Out and or a safety and health event. And I do know, Sharon, I'm not quite sure how that would fit in our plan, but it would be for consideration on the next agenda.
Very well. We will put that on next month's agenda.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Chris, for coming by. And so we'll have it on for next month's agenda, and hopefully we can have something to look at then. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for the great work that you do.
Vice Mayor,
Yes.
just to FYI, we have done partnership before with school district, with town hall, and we supported one time before, and something that next month we can revisit and using the topics that it was brought up by Mr. Norwood today.
Okay. I think if you could share that with me, I'd appreciate it, what those topics were. Thank you.
Okay.
Robert, do we need a motion to have an item placed on the agenda for next month, or we don't?
I don't believe so. This was not for discussion.
Okay.
It was just a city liaison report.
Okay.
Thank you. Excuse me. And just to move us along, that there is no city staff liaison report for item 9.
Thank you. So moving on to item number 10, business items, emergency preparedness presentation. I believe we have commissioners and team members from the emergency preparedness team here on the meeting today. So I'll hand it over to them.
Can everyone see that okay?
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
can.
So we have Tony Charlop here to do a presentation on the City of Milpitas Emergency Services. So welcome, Tony.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm reconnected. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Okay.
Yes.
Here we go. Hi, everyone. I have not been joined on, as I think I was a panelist and just promoted. So there was a whole weird thing where I could see you guys and you couldn't see me, and I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. So anyway, my name's Tony. I'm the Emergency Services Coordinator for the City of Milpitas. On the slide you'll see right now, you can see my contact information and how to get in touch with me if you do have questions after the presentation that I provide you with this evening. Please feel free to reach out to me. Next slide. I'm not sure who's controlled the slide deck. Okay. Oh, hi. Okay. So what type of hazards do we have in Milpitas? I think the most important thing is that in order to identify what you need to prepare for, you need to know what are the hazards that we are subject to here in the city. Sorry, you're going to have to hit them. Go ahead and slide through them. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't realize the animation was still on there. A couple more. 2 more times. There we go. Okay. So here in the city of Milpitas, there we go. Here in the city of Milpitas, we're subject to a handful of different hazards. Oh, go back one more. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So as you know, we're subject to earthquakes, and we were rattled by quite a few of those actually last week, is my understanding. We have flooding concerns in Milpitas, primarily in the northwest corner over in the Millmont-Dixon area. We have flooding issues periodically in certain years that we end up with heavy rain in that area. We also, as a result of that, as a result of fire issues and or just the landscape of the community, we do have landslide issues. So quite a few years back, I think it was 2015, we had some landslide issue up on the Calaveras hillside where we had some significant rains for a period of time. The hillside washed out, and it actually washed out Old Calaveras Road going up into the hillside. And there was about a year it took to put the hillside back together with the roadway for folks to be able to drive up and down on that. So we are subject to landslide at times as well. We do have what we consider severe weather here in California, which could be severe rains, which cause a landslide. It can be severe heat. As many of you know, we've opened up cooling centers in the recent weeks, dealing with those heat related, so we can avoid those heat related injuries. And further, we have fire concerns. The way the fire season's been the last few years, it's been unprecedented. I've been in Milpitas my entire life. I'm born and raised Milpitas kid, and I've never seen the fire seasons like we've been having, especially over the last couple of years. So this last year, a couple weeks ago, we definitely had a scare here up on the Milpitas hillside. We were very fortunate; it didn't affect any of our properties. Didn't come down into what we call the wildland urban interface, where the community interacts or lines up with the hillside itself. So we've been very lucky that it didn't come down the hillside into the community, but it definitely presents a danger. We have seen that occur before, and so it's not on our radar as something that we have to be very vigilant of. Additionally, in the recent years, we've ended up with extended power loss concerns. Some of you know the term PSPS, public safety power shutoffs. Additionally, this last year, we've been subject to what's called CAL-ISO. It's California. I'm blanking on the acronym at this moment, but basically it's the state of California owns the electrical grids that run through the state of California. PG&E is then told you need to shut down the grids as a result of the grids potentially overheating, causing other concerns. So PG&E controls the power outages with regard to the PSPS or infrastructure damage, but CAL-ISO can also require power shutoffs, and those are the ones that we have seen over the last few weeks. We haven't actually had any PSPS public safety power shutoffs. It's been CAL-ISO over the last few weeks as a result of those brownouts, the weather getting extensively hot, and then having to cool the system to get by. Next slide, please. So I feel it's important for you to understand why you prepare, why you need to be prepared yourselves, and I'll go through a few reasons on this. So I want you to understand that, first of all, here in Milpitas, we have approximately 18 firefighters on duty at any given time. That's fully staffed, that everyone reports on the duty. Nobody's kid got sick. No one had to stay home. We have, if I understand correctly, because we've had some new equipment come online, we have 4 engines, 1 truck, we actually have a tiller now, which is the engine that you see with the driver in the front and the driver in the back of the vehicle. And then we have an urban search and rescue, which is known as the USAR. That's the truck that carries around all the big tools. So you'll see those respond to any car accidents because that will cut a vehicle apart. All that equipment is on that USAR vehicle. And then we also recently had an ambulance put into service. When there's a catastrophic emergency such as an earthquake, and with regard to this presentation, for the most part, I'll be talking about earthquakes, just because that's the type of incident that would instantly take our first responder system offline, and not just at a local level, but at a regional level, meaning Bay Area most likely. So when I talk about disasters, even though every one of those things I had identified before is a disaster, that's very isolated to Milpitas for the most part. When we're talking about a major disaster of this scale, it's typically going to be your catastrophic earthquake. So when that does happen, the fire staff, they're instructed to get the apparatus out of the bays, they're called, which is where the apparatus are housed, and they are to drive around the city identifying damage in the community. The reason we do this is because we need to find out where can we do the greatest good for the greatest number, meaning that if we have an earthquake on Sunday morning at 10 a.m., we're not going to worry too much about the schools, because in real world, non-COVID circumstances, kids are not going to be in schools on Sundays. However, that might be something that prompts us to go to what we know as the churches. So we're going to go around to those areas and we're going to assess what's going on in the city and try to figure out where's the most damage impacting the infrastructure, and then where a lot of the people at. Is it a certain time of day or day of the week that we might find more people at one location, just due to what the date of it is. Next slide, please. So the Milpitas Police Department, they run staffing anywhere between 8 and 20 at a time. It really depends on what day of the week it is, what time of the day it is. There's overlaps of shifts. So we could be running heavily in staffing with 20 officers out in the field. We can be running down as low as 5 to 8 at a time. I'll say it's a quiet Sunday morning. It just depends on how the shifts rotation occurs. When there's a disaster, the police department is also going to jump out and go do windshield surveys, assessing that damage, because we need to get all the information in as quickly as possible, fed up to what's called the EOC, which is the Emergency Operations Center. And that's where you'll find your police chiefs, your city manager, your department heads, and then the staffing that augments the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center. You'll find us all up in there collecting that data, trying to make decisions based on what we think is the best decision for the city to do the greatest good for the greatest number. And typically in a catastrophic earthquake type situation, they're going to assist fire as needed. So fire will likely take the lead in that event because it's going to become a rescue situation. So they typically lead the response. PD will be facilitating in that situation. Next slide, please. So why do you need to prepare? The reason I gave you the statistics on the police and the fire department is because there's 75,000 as of 2010 census. There's 75,000 residents that live in the Milpitas community. And during the daytime when we're, again, let's talk pre-COVID world, we were up to about 135,000 with all the people coming in for work, the people coming in for the Great Mall, and it's probably going to be even more significant now that it's become such a transit hub right there in the city center over by the Great Mall with BART and light rail and everything coming together there. So it's important that you get yourselves prepared because it's 75,000 to 135,000 people with 40 first responders on a good day. If you do the math on that, you realize you're going to have to be dependent on yourselves to take care of you and your family. So the emergency response system is not capable of dealing with emergencies in a disaster, including those which are life-threatening. I've heard, now I'm a Milpitas-born kid and I lived through the 1989 earthquake there. I heard that when that earthquake occurred, and given we weren't the population that we were then, we weren't the traffic that we were then, but it took 90 minutes for the fire department to respond to a heart attack victim during the 1989 earthquake. And there was no infrastructure damage at that time other than the lighting, the street lights, or the green street lights, I'm calling them street lights, but I don't mean the lighting, I mean the stoplights. There you go. Stoplights were out. So it caused a huge traffic compaction issue. The problem with that is that was 1989's numbers and not today's numbers. It can take almost 90 minutes to get across Milpitas on a Monday morning as well when we're back to normal traffic. So that's why it's important. You need to be able to take care of your family because first responders are not going to be there quickly. Another reason is due to the infrastructure failure, it may take an extended amount of time for you to get to your family. So if you work away from home and you need to commute home to get to your family, you may not be able to get home right away. And you need to know, does your family know what they need to do in a disaster? Do you have kids that stay home in the afternoons by themselves? Do they know what to do? And we'll kind of talk over this stuff as we get through the presentation. But these are the things you need to take into consideration. Just because an earthquake happens and you can leave work, it doesn't mean you can get home. So you need to make sure that you're prepared for that and your family's prepared for that. It can be the difference between life and death for your family. That goes back to the heart attack story I had told you. There's programs that we have, and I'll talk about them, that would teach you how to deal with life, the 3 killers in a major disaster. We'll go over those and I can tell you a little bit about how you train for those. And we offer those programs, but it could be a matter of if your family member, if they, catastrophic earthquake happens, their arm gets cut, an artery, God forbid, got cut and they're bleeding out. Do you know what to do? And you can't call 911 because if the system's working, they're going to be overloaded. So what are you going to do in that situation? And then lastly, you need to prepare because it could take up to 72 hours or more for relief response to come in. That means people and resources to be delivered into the city. If we're dealing with a catastrophic earthquake, it's going to take time for people, not only the people that the first responders that live in the Bay Area to respond into work, it's going to take time for those FEMA supplies to come in. And then when we make the request for those supplies, whether it be food, water, fuel, cell phone towers to come in, we as Milpitas are not going to be the only ones vying for those resources. Everyone in the Bay Area who's affected by the earthquake is going to be vying for those resources as well. So you really need to prepare. 72 hours, I really tell people, is really the minimum. You want to look probably more closer to a week. Next slide, please. So the first thing I want to tell you guys to prepare yourselves is get yourselves registered for Alert SCC. Maybe by a show of hands, can you guys tell me, is anyone registered for Alert SCC? Oh, I say, Oscar, you have no excuse. We've talked plenty of times. Okay, good. So I see a few of you guys are. So there's, first of all, let me explain. There's 2 different alert systems. There's Alert SCC, which is a local system. That's myself, the dispatch operators, and the dispatchers up at Communications Hill, which is the county dispatch. It's myself and those other 2 agents or operational agencies that are able to do a page out into that system. We send out an alert, and it can be something as evacuate the area between this block and this block, go this way, do not go to that way. We can give you a lot of information on Alert SCC, where on the flip side, you have what's called wireless emergency alerts, which is also a great system and functions in its own area. The wireless emergency alert system is a federal alert system. That's the one, if you remember, that set off that alert to Hawaii that Korea had sent missiles over a couple of years ago and panicked everybody. It obviously misuse of the system and it was not intentional. But the way that system works is that's based on the triangulation of your cell phone. So what that means is if the reason it's a great system is because say I go on on vacation in Hawaii, as one of our chiefs actually did when this happened. I go on vacation in Hawaii. I don't register for their local alerts because I don't live there. It doesn't apply to me. But if I'm in Hawaii and a disaster occurs, a volcano is erupting, and they need me to evacuate, they can send me an alert based on the fact that my cell phone is there, telling me to evacuate that area. Whereas the local alerts, I have to physically go in and sign up for those. So the Alert SCC is an opt-in system. You need to go to that website, alertscc.org, and register your cell phones. Because what happens is if I live in Milpitas, but I work in San Jose, and my son or daughter goes to school over in Cupertino, I can register their school address, my work address, my home address. You can register up to 5 addresses up in Santa Clara County, and you can get the emergency alert even if you're not in the neighborhood. So for example, as the Hawaii example was because you were standing in Hawaii, you got the alert. This, I can be in San Jose, and if there's an emergency going on at my house, I'll get the notification from Milpitas because I registered for Milpitas. That's the difference between the two systems. So it's very important that you get yourself registered, because that's really our notification system here in the city of Milpitas as to how we notify the residents in the community if we need them to evacuate, if we need them to shelter in place, or give any other direction. Next slide, please. So emergency preparedness, you want to make, like I said, a minimum of a 72-hour kit per person in your house. This is supplies that you could survive if the event that there was power was shut down. You have to assume in an earthquake we're going to lose power. If you lose, gas has to be shut off for some reason, and you need to shelter in place or evacuate the area if you're able to do so. But you want to make sure that you have the ability to secure water and food for your family. Oftentimes people will go out and buy bottled water, and that's a great thing to do. The other thing I want to highlight for folks is the water supply in your house. You have, unless you have one of those, the newer water heater systems, the instant heating, you have a large water tank in your home of water that's clean and potable and secure. As long as you don't turn on your hot water, that water in that tank stays secure. So say, for example, a water line breaks out in the middle of the street. If you go and shut off your water, so I want you to understand how to shut your water off. You can see it on YouTube, but you can go out to your hose bib, typically out by the street. You shut your water off, and now all the water in your home is secure. You're not letting any water in from the street. The water in from the street might be contaminated because if the ground's shaking and the water pipes run underground, they very well might rupture. So if you've secured that water to your home, then you can drain that water from your water heater, and you've got anywhere from 40 to 60 gallons just in that water heater alone that's just sitting there stored in your property. So while yes, you can absolutely do bottled water and rotate them in and out, you still can absolutely use that water that's in your water heater if you're aware of how to do that. Food as well. People sometimes they'll go and they'll purchase those, what they call MREs, like meal replacement. And they're expensive and they're kind of gross looking. I'm not against them, but we all have that food in our pantry we don't want to eat. We could if we were going to starve to death. So just make sure that you keep that food rotated in and out. You can store food, of course, if you want, but it's not necessary that you have to pay for those meal replacement packages if that's not something you choose to do. Another thing I tell people to keep aware of your medications and medical devices. If you cannot live without certain pills, you need to make sure you have a couple on hand extra, because if you run down to your last 72 hours, odds are your medical provider is not going to be able to process medical prescriptions for you. CVS or Kaiser, whoever you go through, they've lost power. Odds are they're not going to be able to fill prescriptions for you. So don't run your prescriptions down to the last minute. I also recommend going back to our conversation about not necessarily being able to get home right away. If you have medication that you have to take in the evening, always make sure you carry it on you so that if you can't get home for 24 hours, 72 hours, you have a supply in your vehicle with you at all times that you refresh and rotate in and out. Because if you can't get home, you want to make sure that you don't become an emergency. Glasses, I'd always encourage people, you can buy them so cheap nowadays to get an extra couple extra pairs, put them in the office, put them in your home, put them in the car. Trauma kit. I don't really call it a first aid kit because the reality is in a catastrophic disaster, a first aid kit is not save anyone's life. So we're not talking about Band-Aids here. If we're talking about gauze, and I'll show you a picture of that in a moment. You want to put together a trauma kit that if someone in your family is significantly injured, you have the ability to at least treat them until you can get them to emergency response. Additionally, you want to keep batteries, chargers, flashlights, common stuff. makes sense. You can find these lists online, and I'll give you some resources for those as well. You want to get an AM/FM radio so you can get information if you need to receive information on that. You want to make a communications plan. We'll talk about that a little bit more further in the slideshow. And then important documents. I'm not sure we cover it, so I'll cover that real quick. You want to keep those things that are not easy to replicate. I say anything that is birth certificate, death certificate, passports, and pretty much anything you get from the DMV is not something that's easy to get again. So keep those things, if you don't keep them on your person, such as your driver's license, keep them in a location that if your family had a house fire and they needed to grab everything and run out, those are one of those things you don't want to have to go through dealing with trying to recreate. Put them in an area that they're easily grabbable, and that way you can just go with them. If anyone in your family needed to evacuate your home, you can grab them and go. And then a car charger, a cell phone charger in your car. I love those. I live by those things. I have those all over the place because at some point we're going to lose power in our house, but the batteries in the car will still work, so you can charge up the cell phones, and that'll get you probably another day or so out of those. Next slide, please. Okay, so trauma kit. We talked about this a little bit. You want to keep things in their cold compresses, gauze pads, gauze rolls. You can never have enough gauze. Like I promise you, you'll run out of it. You couldn't have enough of it. In fact, my CERT members, which I'll talk about in a little bit, they're trained to look for pillows and towels and sweatshirts and anything that can be used in lieu of gauze, because you will run out of it. You'll never have enough of that. You want to put in medical latex, non-latex type gloves, because you're going to be treating yourself, your family members, and at some point you will probably end up having neighbors knock on your door asking for assistance as well. You want to protect yourselves first and foremost. Duct tape is a fantastic thing. You can make slings out of duct tape. You can make braces out of duct tape. You can do all kinds of stuff with duct tape. So I always throw duct tape into my first aid kits or my trauma kit. Scissors, and then you can always put in your basic first aid kit in there as well. Advil, things like that, that'll make life a little more comfortable. But you really want to make sure you have the tools that you need to save a family member's life in that kit to take care of you and your family. Next slide, please. So communications plan. You really want to put together a communications plan with your family. So for those of you who don't know how the phone system works, there's the local phone calling, and then there's long distance calling. In a catastrophic emergency, the local calling system will probably collapse, for lack of a better term. Everyone's going to be using the system. You can't call locally to, mom or dad who are in another city locally. You really need to establish a check-in system out of the area. So out of the area, out of the state. If you have a family member, college roommate, friend, whatever, out of California, set up with them to be their point of contact. So essentially what would happen is, catastrophic earthquake happens, everyone starts calling around trying to let their family members know they're okay. You want to be able to call out of state because, again, it's a different phone system. It won't be overloaded. It's not anticipated to be overloaded the way the local system is. You can contact out of state, let them know, hey, tell my husband I'm working, I'm safe, I'm okay. I'm going to stay here at work because it's not safe to drive home. And then husband will get to a certain point where he can call the family member out of state, say, hey, tell my wife I'm okay, I'm at home, I'm with the kids, etc. Any kids that are old enough to own a phone can have those phone numbers available to them as well. So it's always smart to have that conversation with them, let them know what to expect. And then you want to get those phone numbers for daycare, homework, school. Make sure you have those available to you. And then you want to also create an emergency meeting location. So I encourage people to do a local, meaning right outside your home. So in the event of a fire, for those of you especially who have young kids, don't typically hear fire alarms going off in their sleep. They can sleep through anything. I don't get it, but they can. They won't hear those alarms go off, or they'll hear them and they get scared and they'll hide under the bed, but they don't come out. They need to understand what those alarms are for, and they need to know what to do when they hear those alarms. We practice with our kids, and we tell them, you know what, if there's a fire alarm, you hear fire alarm going off, you need to get out of the house. If you're, we go through the doors hot, the same stuff they get taught at school. But my kids know that they are to break out their window. And that's another thing you need to teach young kids, because we tell our kids all the time, don't break the windows, don't break the windows. My kids, when I told them, okay, if you can't get out your bedroom door, what would you do? They were clueless to the idea. They were mind blown to the idea that I told them break your window to get out of there. And you can pick up a chair to do it, or a bat, whatever it is that you have. But you have to have these conversations, because the common sense doesn't always come through when they're young at that age. They need to learn that these are things that are okay for them to do. And then they know to go to our meeting location, which is our neighbor's front yard driveway area. So the last thing we want to do as first responders is say, okay, is everyone accounted for? and you guys didn't have a meeting location, and some kids are on, some family members on one side of the house, some family members on the other side of the house, and then we send our first responders in to go look for these people, and they're not even in there, and then we put our first responders' lives in danger in order to then, of course, search the house. And we will do that. If you don't have accountability for everybody, we will send people in for that. So you really need to have those conversations with kids, how to get out, where everyone is expected to meet, because we don't want to put our first responders in harm's way to rescue someone that's not actually in the house. We'll also want to have a location that's outside of the local home. So for example, the neighborhood gets put on lockdown and you need to go meet, you need to evacuate the home. You want to know where you and your family members can meet outside of that area. Local school is great because kids always know what school they go to, somewhere that's familiar with them, somewhere in the neighborhood, but far enough away that they could walk to it if they needed to. And then lastly, you want to share the plan, practice it. I encourage folks to practice on at least once a year, refresh your supplies, practice, talk about it, update phone numbers, do this stuff at least once a year. On the fall, the smoke detector, change your batteries out. That day is a great day to do it. Just make it a home family safety day. Updates your kits, get your stuff cleaned out, and have these conversations with your kids and your family members so that everyone knows what to expect in a disaster. Next slide, please. So evacuation routes and reunification points, excuse me. I kind of talked about the reunification points, which is a local one and one that's a little bit further away in case you have to evacuate the home. But you want to also establish alternate evacuation routes to and from work and home, because what happens in an emergency, we panic and we go into muscle memory. And there's so many times you drive home from work and you realize I didn't remember passing this such and such building that I always pass, but it's because it becomes muscle memory to us. We don't even think about it. We just go that way. You want to do that with your alternate emergency routes because you don't want to get yourself into trouble in a disaster. You want to make sure you're comfortable and you know those routes and you know them by muscle memory by practicing them. Again, you want to go through and establish reunification points near your home and outside your neighborhood. I won't get into that one again. I highly encourage folks, especially women, we love our heels, to keep comfortable walking shoes in your car. You never know when that car is going to break down, when you have a personal emergency or when you have a situation where you just have to get out of the car and abandon the vehicle and leave it and walk because state infrastructure came apart and you can't drive through the overpass that fell down. You might have to walk. So I encourage you to please keep comfortable walking shoes for everybody. Keep comfortable walking shoes in your car. If you have small children or babysit or take care of small children or have them in your car at any point in time, I also encourage you to keep a stroller in the vehicle. The reason this came from actually, so I had twins. I had twins and I had a 3-year-old toddler at the time. And I had this moment of panic. Never happened to me, but I had this moment of panic even before I was in this role that I am as an emergency manager. That I suddenly realized that if my vehicle broke down on the freeway, because we travel the freeway to and from school and daycare and whatnot, I had to contain 2 infants and a toddler from running around on the freeway. And it was just a moment I had that put me into sheer panic. So I encourage people, it's not something you necessarily think through because you think, oh, there's an emergency, I'll pull over and we'll stay in the car. But you know what, sometimes in this heat, you can't stay in the car. Sometimes you have to evacuate the vehicle for safety reasons. And if you have a small child, just the safety of being able to secure them into a stroller and push them out of harm's way, I can't tell you how much better I felt once I kind of came across that and realized that was something I needed to start doing. And I traveled with this huge contraption of a stroller for 3 children, but I felt better about it at that point. And then again, you want to practice and create that muscle memory that I talked about. Next slide. And then you want to prepare for your pet. So in addition to the family, you want to make sure you take care of those special needs of pets, of infants, of toddlers. If you have family members that have medical conditions that need extra special circumstances for them, you want to make sure you prepare for those things. So for this example, I use pets. You want to make sure when you prepare those 72-hour kits, you put one together for your animals as well. And that's food and water for them. You want to measure that out, make sure you have it for them. If they have medications, it's great to crate train your dog or cat. Oftentimes the animals take off running when you take those things out. I know my dogs, they'll run to me as soon as I bring the leash out, but they have no interest in the crate. So you want to train your pet so that if there's an emergency, you need to contain your pet quickly and get them out of the home. What can you do that teaches them to come to you versus you having to run after them, especially if they're going to run and hide like cats often will when they're scared of things. You want to figure out a way to train your pet that the pet will come to you, so you're not searching for them in a disaster because you've got to get out of them sometimes. You want to keep your collar and the tags on them as well. Keep your pet immunization record. I oftentimes, what I'll do is after I take my, we have dogs, after I take my dogs to their vet appointments, I have them send me their updated records. And that way I always have them on my phone. So in the event that we had a shelter or I had to put my dog into a shelter, they're going to want those immunization records as best they can. We're going to consider the circumstances. It is an emergency, but the best case scenario, you would have your proof of immunization. And that might be the difference between being able to shelter your pet easily or having to find somewhere else to do it. And then you'll want to take a photo of you and your pet together. There's going to be lots of lost animals. You want to make sure that you have proof that that dog is your dog. Okay, next slide. So personal preparedness, that kind of goes back to the last slide, which really is what do you guys need that is specific to your family? And this isn't necessarily something to just, I'm not asking, I'm not looking for answers. It's really what you need to consider that you and your family, the special needs of your family, if you have infants, if you have toddlers, children, parents living with you, what are the things that your family needs that you would need to take care of? What do you need to get by day with them? Next slide, please. So here in the city of Milpitas, again, going back to under normal circumstances, non-COVID, because it's definitely hampered things a bit. We have 3 different programs that we run out of the Office of Emergency Services. I'm going to talk about CERT in a moment. It's kind of got its own slide. There's a lot of CERT. But we have 2 programs called Map Your Neighborhood and NeighborFest. NeighborFest, we're actually just kicking off. In fact, we just sat through the presentation of the developer of that program, I think in January, February, and then of course things shut down. But Map Your Neighborhood is a program, and NeighborFest is a lot along the same lines, where if you and your neighbors, say you have a neighborhood watch going on already, we can actually bring you these programs, or basically we sit down with you and we go over, okay, does everyone have everyone's phone numbers? What assets in your community? What hazards are in your community? We sort of establish how you would set up kind of your own command post in a disaster within your neighborhood to talk to one another and work with one another for basically your survival after a catastrophic earthquake occurred and when first responders can't help. So the neat thing about Map Your Neighborhood and NeighborFest is kind of, I look at preparedness as kind of a 3-pronged approach. There's your personal preparedness, which is what we've kind of gone over. It's preparing you and preparing your family. Map Your Neighborhood, NeighborFest is kind of the next step up, in which it's not special training. It's really just getting to know your neighbors, and we facilitate the discussion to get the information that you guys need from your neighbors to one another, so that when a disaster happens, you know how to activate your incident command post in your neighborhood. And then the next program we have, which kind of takes it another step further, is a CERT program. So next slide, please. So the CERT program is kind of emergency preparedness on steroids. It's a great program, but it's definitely a very involved program. Thelma's in the program. Bob Nunez, he's taken the program as well. You go through, it's 20 hours of training, and within that training, it's not just sit in classroom, it's very hands-on, but we go through personal emergency preparedness, as we've discussed tonight. Obviously, this is far more in depth because we're talking about 20 hours of training and preparedness, but you go through personal emergency preparedness. We go through utility controls. So I teach you how to turn off the gas meter and when you should turn off your gas meter after a disaster, because it's not always the right thing to do. We talk about turning off your water, turning off your electrical panel box, identifying it and learning how to turn that off and when you should turn it off. We go through hazmat identifications to keep you and your family safe and what you should be doing if there is a hazmat incident, say out in the community. We go through medical triage and treatment, and that's probably the most critical component. It's definitely the longest component, but I find that regardless of what level or what comfort level you have with all of these components of the program, that medical triage and treatment is what's going to identify and teach you how to treat your family members if something catastrophic happens to them medically in an emergency. So this is probably, even if you don't want to respond to the CERT program, just the medical training of this program on its own is, I feel personally, is very invaluable. In fact, I add in CPR training, which CPR is not part of the CERT program, but I feel it's so important that people learn that I actually added it to the program. We also talk about terrorism, how to identify it, what to do if you think that you suspect something just doesn't look right, to see something, say something. We go through disaster psychology, kind of how people respond to it, what you can anticipate from yourself, from the people you're working alongside within the CERT program, and those that may respond to you as community members who need help. We talk about disaster response organization and the administration of it. Cribbing, which is the ability to lift heavy materials. This is a very basic explanation. Lift very heavy materials off of someone if you had to extract someone from out from under a rubble pile. We do search and rescue as well. We teach you how to safely do that, how to mark up so that people know that a building has been searched and they don't need to send first responders in or more rescuers in. And then we also teach fire suppression, which is a very fun unit where we actually light fire and you get to learn how to use a fire extinguisher properly to extinguish the fire. So you know how to do that if you had to do that at your own home. Next slide. Ready.gov, very important website to go to. It goes through basically everything I've talked to. It talks you through this evening. It gives you the list that what you need to put into those 72-hour kits. It gives you the template for the communications plan for your family. There's a plethora of resources in that website. And in fact, it's actually multilingual. I think it's got like maybe 15 different languages in it. So it's a great resource. You can change it over to the languages you're more comfortable with or family members are more comfortable with. You can switch it over to theirs. Tons of information, lots of checklists, things that you need to pack, things that you need to do, things that you need to prepare. It's a really great website. And of course, I'm always available with the local Milpitas Office of Emergency Services. Next slide. And that's it for me this evening. I know that was a lot of information, but I'm here for questions as long as you guys see me.
Hi, Tony.
Hi.
Thank you again for presenting these. Is always great and awesome. A couple questions, Tony. One is, I remember you mentioned it to me before about what you stated, the importance of being prepared at least for 72 hours because the response from the city or any emergency service is not going to be immediately. My question is regarding, I don't know what is the status of what is going to happen with the fire building on Park Victoria that I think it was torn down. I don't know if it's going to be replaced or what. Yep. It's going to be replaced?
Yes. So they're in the process of rebuilding the station. They're going to be rebuilding Station 3 as well at some point, which is over by the police department. But right now, if you haven't noticed it, because I just noticed it driving through one day through town, I happened to catch it out the corner of my eye. Fire Station 2, that's the Park Victoria one in Yosemite that we talk about. It's actually now located on the other side of the freeway on Sinclair frontage and 880 in Yosemite. So it's at that corner there, just on the other side of the freeway, kind of almost kitty corner over the freeway. So there is still a fire department, fire station there. It's just definitely not as noticeable because it's in a more of a warehouse type building.
And that's the temporary location
Temporary.
until...
Yeah,
okay.
So they're rebuilding.
Okay, the only reason, because I remember what you mentioned to me, that if the bridges collapses, they say one side of the town that will have no service, to put it this way. And this is the case between how the city is being divided with 680, for example, one of the dividers, and how that can affect the west side of 680. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And the other thing, Tony, is, again, and probably you heard this from me before, remember what we did at some point with the Hispanic community and trying to provide some the information to diverse language and also population that might not necessarily will get all these amazing programs that you have, and they are the ones, as you stated, I remember before, the ones who are going to clock the system if an emergency happens. So my question goes around, especially with elder non-English speakers, and we have so many immigrants from India, from Vietnam, as well as all the residents, Hispanic residents too, how we can work around disseminating the amazing work that you have. At some point, I was thinking to work something that you can work closely with the school district, for example, or agencies like that can not just pass a flyer, but actually get the information that you are providing to us or you have provided before to every less fortunate population in Milpitas?
Yes. So, okay. So that was a lot in that question. Let me address, first of all, so right before COVID had hit, it was the summer right before. So I had put through a couple of folks through what's called Listos, and it's a Spanish community emergency preparedness training. I actually have a couple of folks that went through the training. We were waiting for the school year to kick off and get settled back in, and then coronavirus hit. So there's definitely a challenge to reaching those communities, especially right now while everybody's sort of sheltered in place under the circumstances that we're under. It's definitely a partnership between me and the community, which again, going back, things that have hampered. But I have relationships with individuals that do a lot of the translation communication into those communities that are a little more tightly knit because of the cultural language barriers. And it's really working with the school district, which we have done in the past, to make outreach to those communities and the parents through the children, because oftentimes that's how we can reach those families that don't necessarily speak English as a first language. So yeah, it definitely presents its challenges. It doesn't go unnoticed, and we're working our way into those avenues. Again, going through having folks through the Listos training, having an individual I work through with the Chinese community. It's really a partnership with me and the community that allows me to reach out into the communities that I have these individuals that are trusted within their community that I can work with and get through. And sometimes it's through cultural centers, through churches, through religious institutions that really allows me that pathway to those organizations where I can have these sort of conversations with them and tell them how to prepare themselves.
If I may just jump in really quickly, we are coming up on our 8 o'clock and we still do have another item on the agenda. I want to respect that Commissioner Kavita did in the chat ask a question, so I'd like to give her the opportunity to do so. And then if there are any additional questions, if they could be emailed to Tony.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can move to the next agenda item. So
yeah, no problem.
Please.
Hi, Tony. Thank you so much. This is my first time attending this. It was very, very informative. Thank you. And also, I want to add to what Commissioner Leon said, and especially given that there was a very tragic incident of in the autism community where in Fremont, where a parent and her son died in a fire because a child, yes. So it just happened last couple of weeks ago because the child was not in a position to get out, and he weighed 280 pounds and the mom couldn't get him out. So it's very unfortunate for, especially, I wanted to know, how do we prepare special needs families, and how do we prepare, especially, is there a way that the city or the Emergency Preparedness Office has a list of individuals? Is there a way we can register if they can be addressed to as first response? I mean, you know what I mean? Like have a priority on checking in with these families. How does that work?
It's interesting you brought that up, because it's been a conversation I've had for actually quite a few years. And the problem that we have with it, and it doesn't mean it's impossible, it just means this is a problem we've had that we need to find a way around, is the HIPAA concerns. Now, someone could voluntarily come to us and say this, and that might be the route that we need to go. But I will say, with regard to the unfortunate circumstance that happened in Fremont, oftentimes what I do is, first of all, the fire department is really great about going out to the schools, and when we're in session, going out to the schools, introducing kids, and they gear them up so they can see, this is what a firefighter looks like. It's going to be scary in the dark with the smoke and the noise. We gear them up with that. But I highly encourage folks, go visit your fire stations. They're there. We're community servants. We're there to have those conversations. So if you have a child, of someone with a child with special needs, bring them down to the fire station. Yes, you might be busy, and right now with COVID, it might be a little different, but I would say definitely make those phone calls. Ask if you can come down, especially if you have a child with special needs that doesn't understand this is what a firefighter looks like in an emergency, because it's really scary in that sort of situation. I don't know the details of the circumstances you told me. It sounded like there was a mobility issue. So that is a whole nother level that would have to be dealt with. But yeah, we're community servants. We're there for you guys. If you want to ask questions, bring those kids down, have them find out what it looks like, what a fire department looks like, what a firefighter in a uniform looks like, and the gear looks like. Go have those conversations with us. We're here for them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And can I email you to discuss some?
Oh, absolutely. Any of you. Yeah, any of you. Please feel free to email me. My email runs like my to-do list. I won't delete your email until I've addressed it. So if I don't get you right away, but I promise I will not ignore you.
Great, thank you.
Everyone have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Robert, should we move to the next item here?
Yes.
Which is the city work plan that you had, or the commission work plan here for 2020-2021.
Yes, give me 1 second and I will bring it up and then we will get going here. Thank you, everyone. Okay, please let me know if you can see that. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit just to make sure everybody can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Is that good? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you very much, Vice Chair. As we do every year, we must submit a work plan to the City Council for approval. I'm displaying the draft work plan on my screen now, and I've also sent each of you a copy. The work plan identifies the various tasks and required resources for our commission to accomplish the plan, as well as discussion and final deadlines. So you can kind of see how it's all laid out, going down 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 all the way down at the bottom. I'll stay at the top here as we'll plan to discuss these briefly. Unfortunately, due to the nature of our events, where you interface more closely with the public, we were unable to complete a majority of our work plan from last year. But this year, this work plan will mirror the work plan approved by the City Council last year, but with some slight modifications made to account for the ongoing pandemic. So we'll go through each one of these just very briefly, and then we'll turn it back to the Vice Chair for discussion and a vote of approval. So Sarah, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to cover the first couple of items on our work plan for 2020, 2021. The first one you'll see up here is the CDBG public hearing process. So the CAC will still be a part of the CDBG public hearing process in the upcoming year. We're working right now on identifying ways that we can streamline the application process for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. And we'll update you all when we have a work plan that is finalized and we can have more information on how the CAC's tasks will look as it relates to the CDBG process. But just as a general comment, you'll still be involved in the public hearing process for CDBG in the next fiscal year. For Spring Cleaning Day, the CAC work plan reflects a slight change for next year in that we pushed out the tentative month to May to give a little bit more leeway for the anticipated restrictions as it relates to coronavirus. So that's kind of the only change on item number 2 there. And then I believe Robert's just going to finish up the overview of the work plan.
Thank you, Sarah. So items 3 and 4, as we're experiencing now, are very much contingent upon the pandemic, still having an impact, or us identifying alternative methods of completing these items that we can discuss and we can approve. It sounded like during the liaison report that they're looking for alternatives already for National Night Out. So what I went ahead and did here, and I'm recommending to this body to approve, is broadening out the discussion time to account for alternative ways that we could potentially keep the work plan intact for the next year. So the span of time between National Night Out being April and August, and then neighborhood beautification being May and September, right? Just a lot of time to give us a chance to still accomplish those work plans if there's still restrictions in place. And then finally, moving down here to promoting Affordable Housing and Building Safety Month. Affordable Housing and Building Safety Month was supposed to be a series of in-person events prior to the pandemic. However, SV at Home, who is a local nonprofit who hosts and sponsors the event, was able to pivot and make the event an all online affair this past year. So we were able to maintain that last fiscal year, and I actually anticipate them doing that again this year. because it was wildly successful and very well attended throughout the community. So we will have discussions with this group as to what topics to present for Affordable Housing and Building Safety Month, and then how to best promote the event for maximum Milpitas involvement. So with that, I will turn it back to Vice Chair Ashish for discussion and a vote.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, and thank you, Sarah, for the plan. Anyone has any comments on these 5 items or any anticipated changes that we see given the current circumstances we are in? Rather than going line by line, I mean, there are only 5 items here, so we know the dates when we need to plan. Any recommendations, any suggestions here?
Just one thing. I can't remember the status. I think we didn't include in our initial draft the town hall concept because it's every other year, and it was not fitting for this year. So I don't know where. Forgive me for my not remembering this point where that fits, and the reason why it's caught my attention is because of what Vice President of the school district, Chris Norwood, mentioned about having something together or to help promoting the health and the new aspects. So I don't know where are we regarding that, if it's time to add it or it's not, is every other year. So I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Commissioner Leon. I believe the town hall was last year. I don't think we had a town hall this year. So that means if we have room to have that event next year, in what form or shape, I don't know, then that's something that as a commission we should discuss if we can have that next year, given that it was planned for alternate years.
Given the current situation, do you think that we could encourage or plan a virtual town hall? That could be something that can be put together. Is that something that we could consider?
That's a suggestion. Or the other way would be to push the town hall instead of spring towards later half of the year, hoping that things normalize a little bit towards fall, end of summer or fall. And if it doesn't happen, then we can go virtual.
So usually we have done the town hall, the election year, right? Basically the even year in the past, right?
Is there a reason why it's done every alternate year, also it's only an annual event?
It used to be annual, Commissioner Kavita, but based on the reviews that we had done and the work items that we had, now we have 5 work items, but originally we had 8 or 9 different work items and events during the year. So the year became really, I think, congested.
Okay. Potatoes.
So we decided to move the town hall and decided to collaborate with either the school district or other organizations to make it much bigger. And we shifted to a alternate year model.
Just from the city's perspective.
Vice Chair?
Oh, go ahead, Sharon.
Oh, I'm sorry, Robert. Go ahead.
Please go ahead.
I was just to mention that I know during the discussion last year, because we had gotten some feedback that town hall was something in a format that was kind of more desired for example, for city council meetings. And that's why the discussion resulted in more of, for example, putting the effort into the promotion for building safety and Affordable Housing Building Safety Month in those type of community events, rather than a commission doing a town hall. So that was the discussion last year.
Yeah, so does that mean that the town hall event, which the CAC has traditionally planned, whether it's alternate years now, sort of goes beyond the scope and the work planning for this commission and needs to be done at the city council level? Is that what the suggestion is?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of the format of it. And that's why last year those discussions resulted in what you see up there. Because what our team did is basically did a little bit of updates to last year's work plan, also keeping in mind that we'll probably have to get used to doing some things in virtual format and because of COVID-19.
So this, sorry. So this work plan is this is Thelma for 2020 to 2021, which is ending in June. So I just want to reiterate about the town hall. In the next one, depends on when you want this town hall to be happening. The reason why we remove it this year is because it's election year. We don't want the candidates to be using that platform. So that's the only reason. So we can do it every year, we can do it whenever, but we just want to avoid the election years. That's the only reason why. We could always do it. The reason why we didn't put it this time is because of that. But we can certainly put it in now in, for example, or anytime. That's the only reason why. Or we could always put it in there and we say town hall, TBA or whenever it's going to happen. So it's up to us to make a determination during that time frame if we want to go ahead with it or not. But at least it's presented in the work plan.
I sort of agree. I don't know. I would think it would be great to have something like a town hall or a community conversations kind of an event where people, we encourage people to come together and express if there's matters of concern. City Hall, yes, but then again, that's a legislative body and it's a different environment there as opposed to a facilitated community conversations event through this commission. It's just a thought. I wanted to suggest that if it's possible to do it.
I think that's a great suggestion. I think in line with the commission, having this dialogue with the community, that is your mission. And I think it's just also the terminology of town hall, kind of makes it seem like it's really tied to the city administration. And so, yeah. So if you guys want to brainstorm on a name for an event.
I have some concern also here in town hall meeting. Is that what if the physical distancing is still enforced? Are we do we have problems with that? Like if we will push through with the town hall meeting next year?
So Commissioner Rosario, your concerns are valid. I think what we are saying is, do we need to have that in the work plan? Looks like we need to. And then the implementation part of it is if the current situation persists next year, then we would shift it from being in person to maybe a virtual event. And the logistics of that would be determined closer to the event.
Yeah, our IT group can certainly do it. I mean, I've attended other conversations where there's we can even call it community, community discussions, community, but yeah, just to not use the word town hall, but certainly we can put it here and then we can discuss it. But it's nice to put it in there so that we are on the lookout for it and the topic and whatever else.
I would just like to make a quick suggestion to the group. So, and I like where the conversation is going, and I like the idea. I actually believe that the CDBG public hearing process meets that criteria. It is an event that we publish in the newspaper for people to attend, to come and discuss the needs of the community and have a conversation with you all. I think in years past, it's sort of been a little watered down too much with applicants presenting versus hearing the needs of the community, right? Not necessarily the nonprofits telling you exactly why they need the funding, right? I believe everybody that sits through those presentations knows that every nonprofit needs the funding, right? But what are the needs of the community? So I think there's a way to mirror those two ideas and make the public hearing process a little bit more community driven, so that you are getting the feedback from the community to have the conversations that you want to have, so that you can take that information as you make recommendations for CDBG funding. Just a thought.
So are you suggesting, Robert, that we combine the two, or can we still have the community conversations or community voices, whatever you want to call the event as part of the work plan, as an event?
I'm saying combine the two. I think the CDBG public process is a forum for the community to come to this body and discuss issues in the community. I think the CDBG public process actually handles it better because of the amount of outreach that we have to do to the community to notify them. That's required by HUD. I actually think it does a really good job of accomplishing what it is that you'd like to accomplish. We need to frame the discussion a little bit better, because we've historically framed it as a conversation for applicants of CDBG funding, but really it should be a community process to discuss the funding.
If we could do it in a separate line, because that takes a long time, the CDBG conversation, and then it will be centered to the grant process, and we can do it in item 5. I mean,
yeah, the only reason I hesitate there, Robert, is because the CDBG takes a lot of time, and at the same time, not everybody in the community is going to sit through the entire process, and some voices may not be heard. So if there is a neutral forum where it's just a discussion about different things that people in the community want to talk about, that would be something that this commission could facilitate, is my thought.
And I agree with you, Kavita. I think a couple of things. One is not only to listen from the different agencies, and that's Robert, a good idea of what you are bringing, but the second part of that is getting that information to the people who are going to use it or is needed for. And that's much harder in CDBG type of environment, and we will not be doing what our community deserves. So, and if it's not possible to have to do it, we always can cancel it. And if the pandemic doesn't allow it or whatever, but at least it's put it in writing somewhere in our plan that will make us decide once things evolve and look forward for something in that nature.
So one thought is last year we did 3 events for Affordable Housing Building Safety Month. We can have one of the events be this community conversation.
yes, that's great.
So I think we should rename number 5 instead of promote affordable housing and building safety month. Probably we can just rename to say the community outreach along with the affordable community outreach, affordable housing and building safety or something like that.
Yeah, we could call it town hall, but just keep the theme as affordable housing for that particular town hall for next year. I mean, it's again terminology based on what Sarah or someone else had mentioned earlier. It's a terminology thing. We can call this as a town hall with the theme being affordable housing for next year.
We're probably going to not use the phraseology of town hall, so I think we can establish that. Affordable housing and building safety is an ICC sponsored month, so that's why, because we have a rare building safety and housing department. Those two things mirror each other well, so that's why we've been using that title.
Okay.
I think in general we can. I don't want to get lost in the weeds here. I want to respect everyone's time, and I appreciate the conversation. I think we are we are willing to try to find a way to get this accomplished in the work plan, whether it's by title but actually happening. So I'm open to all of the suggestions. I just think we're going to leave the names of the overall topic and advisory areas the way that they are.
So Robert, I just kind of have one suggestion I wanted to check with the commissioners about. So for number 5, how about like community engagement?
That's perfect.
Like during Affordable Housing and Building Safety Month.
Huh? So
yeah,
my only
just
concern, and I'm
community
reading
engagement.
I'm also reading the chat from Ms. Van, is the fact that not to tie our hands if it's everything around affordable housing, and that has to be the theme. If we just put it under that number 5, then if we think that there's something else needed, like health or whatever, our hands are tied.
Correct.
So I rather prefer to see item number 6.
Yeah.
And if it's not possible for that to happen because of whatever reason, that doesn't mean that we cannot cancel it. Of course, we presented that to our city council, and that's our goal. But if for any reason, health, COVID, pandemic, or whatever, that cannot happen, we modify the plan.
I agree. I think keeping it as a generic community engagement, because we don't want to restrict the conversation to just affordable housing, would be suggested. Would be better.
Other option would be like, as I know, I would agree to have number 6, but if you're not able to add that, should we just do number 2, spring cleanup day, as an alternate thing? Community engagement 1 year, and the next year would be the spring cleaning day, like every other year.
I think spring cleaning has been one of the well-received events, annual events that this commission has done. So doing it alternate years, I'm not sure how well that would fit in. So combining with 2 is something which I don't think may be the right approach here.
Okay.
And Robert, I know we are running well over time here. So given the suggestions here, I think I like what you've put in here in terms of community engagement, yet we are sort of limiting that to the affordable housing sort of theme here. How do you want to proceed in terms of the work plan here?
Well, I would just defer back to our department name, right? We are the Building Safety and Housing Department, so a focus of ours as your staff liaison is to support the work that we do in our department as well. We can work with the title and try to make it a little bit broader, so that all other types of support services can be considered and discussed. Sort of hard to do this all on the fly right now, but we hear you, and we want to make sure that you have a voice in this. So Sharon and I and Sarah will discuss and we'll see how we can make this work. Of course,
Sure.
all of this is subject to council approval, as you all are aware.
Yep.
But we do
Sure.
need
No, I think, Robert, that's good. The other thing I was thinking, you mentioned that we did like last year or this year, basically, we did 3 events, right? Related to affordable housing and building safety. So probably we can do 2 events related to that. We can do 1 event out of that as a community engagement or community outreach, along with us building like the safety of overall thing, like keeping that criteria in the mind, so that we still be doing the 3 events as we did it this year, but the 2 will be focused on affordable housing and 1 would be focused on general safety.
Yeah, so I like the suggestion that Commissioner Van Long has given in the chat there, is to name the item 5 as community resources and engagement. And then in the next column, you have actually 2 line items clearly spelled out. 1 is on affordable housing and 2 is outreach for the with the community. So it gels well with the name suggestion made by Chair Van Long there to name that as community resources and engagement.
Yeah.
Okay. It's gonna take me a little time to sort of figure this out.
Sure. Yeah.
But we hear you, and I'm chatting with Sharon right now. We'll make sure that we incorporate your suggestions here.
Thank you.
We'll keep it at 5 items.
Yeah, and I think we can expand. Sorry, Robert. I was going to say I think we can expand under that second column here, where you see the 1 and 2. We can add, additional activities too, as suggested. And I don't think we necessarily have to use one of the events. We can still keep the 3 we hosted before and then add additional ones from the commission, actually.
Yeah, the first year we did this, we actually had 5 events. So we're not immune to putting on extra if this body wants to do it. We're happy to facilitate.
Thank you, Robert.
So Chair, Vice Chair Ashish, I do have to mention a public comment came in while we were discussing. With your permission, I'd like to read that public comment.
Please.
So this public comment is by a Mr. Mehta regarding the work plan. And it says, to City of Milpitas and Community Advisory Commission, I request Commission to consider neighborhood block program and amateur radio services and incident response management established for emergency preparedness within City of Milpitas. Thank you for your consideration, Mr. Mehta. And no other public comments.
Okay.
So are we allowed to discuss that, Robert, or what? What is the thing now?
It's purely for the purpose of public discussion. The public is allowed to provide comments on agenda items, and by law we are required to read them. You don't have to vote or do anything with the comment. It's purely the public process playing through.
Robert, so when is the time for actually on the work calendar to look at the topics and the themes? Definitely we can consider some of the comments from the public, as well as some other suggestions. In the past, sometimes the subcommission had looked for those items, if it's about health, if it's about education, et cetera, what it was just mentioned by this comment can be also something that at that time when the planning needs to start is when we can take into consideration some options.
Vice Chair Ashish, if you could ask if there's any more comments or move to vote on the work plan.
Sure. So just to close out on what Commissioner Leon said here, I think what you're referring to, Commissioner Leon, is sort of the themes and the scope and the discussion specifically for town halls as they come up. That's a very valid point. I think as we get towards the planning for each of those work items, so for row number 5, we have February as a month for planning. We should bring those items up and see if that is relevant for that year, and then see if we can implement in the work plan. Just to close out on that comment here from Commissioner Leon. If nothing else, then can we have a vote, a roll call vote on this work plan? Commissioner Leon? Sorry, we couldn't hear you, Commissioner Leon.
You're muted, Commissioner Leon.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kavita, you're alternate, so I think we can skip that. Commissioner George?
Second.
Commissioner Vishal?
Second.
Commissioner Thelma?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Long? You can type your response there. Thank you. And Commissioner Rosario?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and this is myself, Commissioner Ashish. I vote yes as well. Did you get that, Robert? Okay, so if there are no other items, I we'll move on to adjournment for today's meeting. I need a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
I do the motion to adjourn the meeting to the next one in month of November.
Thank you, Commissioner Vishal.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Rosario. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yes.
Aye.
I
Aye.
think we need another roll call.
Okay. So Commissioner Leon?
Yeah. Yes. Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Vishal?
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Thelma?
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Van Long? Thank you for your response. And Commissioner Rosario?
Aye. Yes.
Okay. And this is Commissioner Ashish. Yes from me as well.
Just want to take a moment and say thank you to Vice Chair Ashish for running a very smooth meeting. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Really enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you
Thank
next
you,
month.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe,
Thank you.
everybody.
Good night.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.